Okay, it says it's recording. All right, so I'm going to do the general intro here real quick just for the camera. So welcome everyone to Map Time Davis. I am glad you all are here. I apologize to the folks in the room that this structure for filming of the paper is in the way of my face, but mostly you'll be watching the video anyway. So today we are going to be working on hand-drawn maps. Like I mentioned earlier in the room, this is a brand new workshop, and our goal today is really to have fun. There is a lot going on in the world right now, and we had planned Map Time Davis Map Time Davis Council had planned this workshop because we wanted something that was lighter, something that was less thinking, something we could just have fun with. And we planned this months ago, not knowing how much we would need this at this point. So I'm really glad that I took the time to put this together, and I had fun doing it. So hopefully today we're going to have some fun. So yeah, I think let's dive in to this. I'm going to switch the camera to view the paper. Hopefully this works. Well, I don't think I introduced myself. Did I say my name? I'm Michele Tobias. I work at Data Lab. I work on geospatial data science there. So that is my job. That's who I am. So today we are going to be working with some materials. I have to share my screen so that we can see it on the video. Not super ideal for the folks in the room, but the materials that we're going to be working with are they're linked on the Map Time Davis website. So if you go to maptimedavis.github.io and you scroll down to the events section, I've actually put a link. We could scroll. There we go. There's a link here to the workshop materials, so you don't have to try to grab the tiny little URL out of the off the screen. And for the YouTube video, we'll put a link on the description of the video so folks don't, because this will change next quarter when we have new workshops. But so the materials we're going to be working with again are on this website. There's a lot of text here, and I might switch back and forth so you guys can see what I'm talking about. But yeah, I think generally we're just going to be following along with what's on the paper too. So feel free to refer back to this. You don't need to follow along with the text, but for reference later, it might be useful. Really quickly, an overview of today. Because it's a data lab workshop, we have things like learning objectives, which is fun, right? So the goal today is really like, we're just gonna have fun. That was really my goal. Along the way, you are gonna learn some things, which is also excellent. It's sort of extra. So you'll just, I think, honestly, you'll have a better appreciation for maps by the time we're done with this. Today, we're going to be working with analog materials, so pencil and paper, because that's the easiest way to do this. I actually thought about doing this workshop in Inkscape instead, but then I realized we'd have to teach you all Inkscape skills before we did the mapping part of it, and we'll save that for another workshop. If you want to, if we want to do an Inkscape workshop, I'm happy to do that, but I think we still all can use pencil and paper, so that is what we're going to be doing today. But if you know how to use like digital drawing tools, and you'd rather do that today, by all means, feel free. I'm not going to teach you those skills today, but if you have them and want to use them instead of pencil and paper, then that is fine. I'm recommending that everybody have some materials to start with. I mentioned we've got pencils and paper and pens today. So that's going to come in handy. That's sort of the bare minimum. We've also got, I know there's folks with extra supplies in the room if you need them. I've got a couple good erasers too that you can all share if we need them. But anyway, some materials are recommended. The Zoom stuff so I can see what's going on. So you don't need any skills today, which is good, right? How many of you are like, I feel like my drawing skills are a little shaky? Yes, good. My drawing skills are like, this much better than basic. So we're all in the same boat. And that's totally fine. We're, like I said, we're having fun today. We're not worrying about that. So why do we want to do this? So we're going to frame this up before we start putting pencil to paper, but I'm going to do this quickly. So I think the thing that I get out of doing this process is really a deeper understanding of maps and the cartographic process, and just a really good exploration of maps in general. Like, I started doing stuff like this just because it's fun and end up learning things, and great. Why not? So there's also applications out there in the real world for this. Some of the things that I've seen, especially lately on social media, probably because of the folks that I follow, is that this has applications for art. Like, people do this stuff and they sell it, right? as art, as fine art. Also, I'm seeing a lot of work in things like designing board games and gaming in general. So people are making their own like map board games to play games with. And also like illustrating manuscripts just because it's fun. You might have a map-based story, and so you need a map. So there are applications besides just entertaining ourselves, in case you were curious. Also, the workshop materials are kind of scattered with some examples of hand-drawn maps that I found in various places. So a little bit of inspiration as we go. Also today, we're probably going to pick a real world place to work on just because we can, but feel free to make up your own place. Like, it doesn't have to be a real place. You could make it up as you go, and that might actually be lower stakes, because then it doesn't matter what it looks like, because there's nothing to compare it to. So feel free to get creative with this. Here's an example in the workshop of a map that's drawn by Erwin Reyes, who is like an old school, super talented cartographer. We actually have a lot of his work in our map collection at UC Davis. So if you get the chance to go in there, look up his stuff, we have some of his work. This particular map is a map of Harvard, the Harvard campus. I don't remember what year this is from, but let's just say back in the day. You can look at it in full on his website that's run by his estate. There's a lot of examples in this workshop from his work, because he does amazing work with landforms and stuff like that. And he's just a cartographer that I have enjoyed for a really long time. So, yeah, take a look at some of those as we get going. I think the last thing before we start in on actually drawing is, let's set some intentions for today. This is common in the art world. I want you to try your best to turn off the critical, judgmental, and fearful parts of your brain today. If drawing is something you don't do a lot of, or maybe you thought, oh, I can't draw, like, turn that little thing off, hit mute. We will come back to that some other point. We're just having fun today. It doesn't matter if you draw stuff and it doesn't come out the way you think it should. Like, turn that off. We don't care. So kind of for those of you who are familiar with Bob Ross on PBS, we're drawing happy trees today, and nothing is a mistake. It's just a happy accident. We're not worried about it. Nothing is bad, because we're having fun, right? This is supposed to be low stakes and fun. Okay, so essentially everything you're going to do today is correct. Just don't color on the table and we're fine, but there's enough coffee on these tables that it's not going to stick anyway, so we're okay. All right, so we're going to start with a little bit of preparation before we start our map. And really what you want to do is start thinking about, like, what do you want your map to look like? What place are we going to draw our map of? Is this a made-up location that we're just, like, it's coming out of our heads? Or is this a real place in the real world? And what is the scale of it? And I've got, I think I'm going to stop my share so that we can look at things on the camera here. I've got the original maps that I did for this workshop when I was preparing it. So this is the one you'll see on the, oops, throwing things on the floor. You'll see on the workshop itself, like in the materials. So you can see, like, I've made a choice here about the scale of the map itself. It's pretty zoomed in, right? For this map, I decided to do the area around Lake Spafford, which is a part of the UC Davis Arboretum. It's the big wide lake that's kind of by Marac Hall. So I made a choice here to just zoom in and make things like, so I could draw things big, right? Like I didn't want to do a ton of little tiny things. So I zoomed in and decided I was going to do a pretty limited area. So we need to make those kinds of decisions. What is our map going to look like? Like what place are we mapping? Sort of what's the scale of this map that I'm going to draw? And those are the kinds of decisions that we're going to be making to get started. Another decision that I made here, looking back at the materials for the folks in the room, is that I took a nadir view on this. So nadir means straight down. It's like you're flying over in an airplane and you're looking straight out the belly of the airplane onto the ground, or you're hovering above it like a drone. You could decide to do an oblique angle instead. I'll show you an example in a minute from the workshop materials where we could decide that we want to see like the building elevations, like the building fronts, and we would draw those instead of just like here with the Gorman Museum, I've just got the outline of it. So we can think about those kinds of things. Like these are artistic choices we're going to make. And there's no right or wrong answer for this. It's just what you want to do and what you want to try. Also, like today, I give you permission to be bad at stuff. I think, especially those of us, we're at a R1 research institution. We're used to being good at what we do. And I realize today some of you might be exploring things that you're not used to working on. So let's be bad at stuff today and it'll be fine. Okay, so those are some of the decisions we want to make. And then we're going to gather reference material. So for us in the room, what I want to do, like you can see, I've got like some examples of reference material for Lake Spafford in the workshop materials. And I've got like an example from Google Maps. I've got an example from, this is a campus map from 2004, kind of inspiration, but also like reference materials for the shapes of things. Where do we want to make our map of? What do you want to see me map and potentially follow along with? But like I said, you don't have to do the same thing I'm going to do, but what sounds like fun today? Is there any favorite part of campus you have? Or I'll tell you the quad would be easy. But that's a decision we can make together. Realizing that I'm not plugged in completely with my computer.
I mean, I'm planning on mapping the space around my house in Midtown,
Yeah.
but I feel like that's not.
Let's not do that publicly.
Yeah.
It's probably a best connection. Yeah. So yeah, you can totally do that. You can make a map of your house or maybe a park by your house. Or we could do something in Davis, like, I don't know if you guys have a favorite spot in Davis.
Might make sense.
Mhm.
But then I was also thinking about this is like the water desalinization plant, like that water processing plant that's kind of over by where the connection to the university, it's like if you take that road past the Bobby Center and it goes up under the freeway, there's railroad tracks.
On Old Davis Road in South Campus down near the Raptor. It's like not all the way to the Raptor Center.
Right, it's like exactly. It's like in between the Raptor Center and
So I'm just
the wastewater treatment plant.
maybe
I don't think I have it labeled on the map.
Zoom in on South Campus.
South Campus of the University of
I have no idea where everyone's talking about, but I'm willing to find it.
The goat teaching, I think.
They've gone past it already.
Should I turn on the, does it help to see the satellite?
Yes.
Oh, there's the Raptor Center. Okay.
Looking for two round. Oh no, there it is.
This?
Yes.
Okay. Let's zoom in on that.
That is the wastewater treatment plant. The thing that looks like a racetrack there in the middle, that's
Yeah.
like, it's full aerator. Well, very cool.
All right. I was gonna say like, 'cause we talk, because of Meg's research, we talk a lot about waste stuff, which is fascinating to me because it's not something I know a lot about. All right, so this could be fun. There's a lot of good geometric shapes in here. I was not expecting we would choose to map the wastewater treatment facility, but let's do it. Are you guys interested in this? All right, cool. So I was saying the quad would be easy because the quad is literally like 2 squares and some trees around the outside and then we're done. But like, let's get crazy. All right, so this is what we're gonna do. We'll flip back and forth in the room, but on Zoom, I'm not gonna do that for the recording just because it'll make everyone nuts and I'll forget to stop sharing. But so this is where we are going to be working. So I'm going to stop my share for that. All right, let's get rid of this finished map because we want to start a new one. Okay, so the thing that we're going to do first is we're going to take a look at our area that we're going to be working on. And for those of you that brought like a computer or a phone or, you know, whatever device that can go on the internet, you might want to pull up either the campus map or Google Maps to look at reference material for yourself while we're working through this. It's going to be hard for me to show both at the same time. I'll be flipping back and forth. But the first thing we're actually going to do before we start making the map is we're going to take a look at this area and we're going to figure out, take my little sticker out of the way here. We're going to figure out some of the things that we're going to need to draw and we're going to practice. So this is also known as building a visual vocabulary. Sorry, let me get this out of the way. In the workshop materials, you'll see a picture of something that looks like this. So I went through when I was doing Lake Spafford, I was looking at the area around Lake Spafford and I was saying, what kinds of things am I going to have to draw? And what iconography am I going to need in order to convey what's there? It's a little different than like, you know, making a map of like vector data where like roads are lines. Trees are probably not actually tree shaped, they're probably dots, right? Or canopy might be represented as raster or something like that. So, but because of the kind of map we're making, we want to figure out a way to communicate this is a tree. So in this case, I've started sort of practicing, you know, this is what I think one tree will look like, and this is what I think a group of trees will look like, so that I've kind of planned that out before I start actually drawing things on my map. And then also in the Arboretum, if you've been to the UC Davis Arboretum, you know that there's bridges over the waterways. So I was like, well, I don't want to have to erase a whole bunch on my map that I'm drawing. So I'm going to try this ahead of time and see what kind of iconography I like. So we're going to go through this with the wastewater treatment plant and see what kinds of things we want to put on our map. Like what kinds of things do we think we're going to need to draw? So what do you all think? What kinds of things are in this image that we think we're going to want to put on our map? Okay, so we've got rows. Sorry. So the problem with flippy maps. Oh no, there it is. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, on my paper, I'm going to put like a section that we need, we need roads. And I'll kind of fill this out like a worksheet, smudge some things. All right. So we'll figure out what the roads are going to look like. What else is in this image that we're going to need to figure out how to draw?
Buildings?
Okay, great. So we're going to put a section for buildings.
Settling pond.
Settling pond. So ponds. Okay.
I guess, there's a question. I mean, having taken a tour of this place recently, you've got settling ponds, you've got aerators, you've got fish ponds, but they all kind of look like circle places that store water.
Mhm.
Maybe you'll address this. It's
Yeah.
like, when do you differentiate between 8
Yeah.
different kinds of water and
Yes.
this is water?
Yeah, and so with this kind of map, it's your choice. Like you get to decide as the cartographer, like because I don't have a lot of knowledge of this place, I've not had the opportunity to go here, which sounds like it's super cool to actually take a tour. I haven't been there. So like, to me, I'm like, well, I probably would just draw the ponds as the same thing. But if you have knowledge of that and that's something you want to convey, you know, maybe you make a different cartographic choice. Maybe when we get to like coloring things in, maybe you decide like when we pencil it in, maybe they look the same, but once we get to the colors, maybe you make them different colors, for example, or you label them differently. So it really is your choice. I mean, this is also the case when you're making like, you know, maps in a GIS too, like how you decide to symbolize something is on some level it's an artistic decision, but also it can be you know, a communication decision, like what do you want to communicate to your audience? So that was a completely non-committal answer because it's totally up to you how you want to do it, but it should be, you know, in some ways driven by like what your goals are. And you know, today we're keeping it light, but if you were doing this for, you know, other purposes, or maybe you have a different, you know, goal today of doing something else, that's totally fine, but you get to make those decisions. Yeah. All right, what else? So we've got roads, we've got buildings, we've got some kind of ponds, some trees. Yeah, there's definitely some trees in there.
And little
Yeah.
horse shadows.
Yeah.
Little horse, oh, there is little horse shadows. Here,
There.
let's zoom in on the little horses.
Maybe they're too small.
Yeah, look, you totally see the horses. Yeah. So we're learning something about remote sensing here. You probably couldn't see those horses except for the shadows. Shadows are important. This also tells me this was not imagery collected at noon or like solar noon. This was probably well, it's also leaf off period. So like I can see that there's bare trees over here. So I'm guessing this was collected in the winter because low sun angle. So anyway, we just learned stuff about remote sensing while we were hand drawing maps. So potentially we could have horses. But note that the shadows are oblique, right? Like it's like you're looking at the side of the horse. So these are decisions we have to make. So we've got so we also have like some kind of ag land or pasture. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so depending on our scale, we may or may not need railroad tracks, but are these?
Okay, so.
Yeah, see, that's important to know. So we might need railroad.
Oh, the,
That was
it's not a bridge.
Like this. It's just a ag grade crossing. Okay, yeah, so these are important things to think about, like and we'll also figure out like what our scale is of this map and what we want to include and what we don't want to include. But I think this is a good list to start of the things that are in our potentially in our map. And we zoomed also just to explain why we're so zoomed in, because the map we're going to make isn't going to take up this whole page. So I'm going to move the page around to see stuff. Okay, so let's start filling this in like a worksheet. So we have a section to put in some roads. So typically, you know, I would draw a road as, you know, maybe just put that in the center. We've got some parallax going on with our camera on the edges. So a little blurry. So I'd maybe make a road that's just, you know, 2 lines, especially if it's a fat road and it's not like super skinny. I'm gonna give it some dimension by just, you know, drawing the boundaries on my road. It looks like we've got in our reference material, we've got, you know, these are kind of dirt roads mostly, or like maybe really old concrete around the thing. So like maybe maybe I would, you know, fill it in with some shading, just to give it, you know, some figure to ground situation where I've got contrast. But maybe I'll do a road, I'll draw it in lightly. And to show that it's rough, I might just along the edge of the road, do a little itty bitty scribble. Nothing, nothing too arty. I'm just literally wiggling my pencil as I go. And now it kind of gives it that effect, like maybe there's like grass growing along the side of it, or like maybe it's a little pebbly I could do another one where it's more rounded and maybe it looks more like gravel. But I'm just like literally making like little upside down U's. They're just super small to give it some texture. They don't even have to connect. So, and I could even like, if this is a dirt road, maybe put a couple little rocks in there. And these are literally just upside down U's. I'm literally doing this, but really small. You all can do, it's like an N without the little stick that goes on the side of the N. Look, that one's not even. It's kind of rough, but who cares? Because it's a rock, right? Like rocks are not perfect. So fine. All right. So there's some things for the roads and we can play with this later, but just start thinking about like how we're gonna artistically draw our things. All right, let's take a look at the buildings. I'm gonna motor through this really quickly just so that we have time to do the other parts. Looks like our buildings, how would you all describe our buildings here? Eh, they're very rectangular, which is great for our purposes. Like polygons, yeah. So yeah, very much like vector polygons. This is not the case on main campus. Main campus has buildings that are like all stuck together and have like weird stuff on them. So that's nice. That's actually helpful for drawing if things are simple. So like, you know, maybe my building is just a simple rectangle. I tend to not want to put like, so the roofs on campus especially often have like HVAC equipment up on top of the roof. And so they're like really detailed and have all this junk. And I artistically don't care. So I will leave that off. But if you want to draw the like air conditioning unit stuff and the ductwork, that is a choice that you can totally do. But I think my buildings are just going to be squares. I might add some like shading on them around the edges. Actually in our reference material, looks like the shadows are going this way. So maybe I'll do something like that, but I'm not going to worry too much about the buildings. I think they're less of the focus of the map, so I'm gonna not worry about them too much. All right, so let's take a look at these ponds. We've got some circle ponds, and then we've got one that looks like kind of like a racetrack with stuff going on. And I think the obvious answer, at least for the circle ones, is just to simply draw circles, right? And that looks pretty good on camera. Looks less good on my paper, but I'm not too worried about it. I know some folks in the room brought like stencils with circles and stuff like that. Feel free to make use of that if it makes you happy. And then we've got our sort of oval one with it's got like lanes in it, right? I will say it's really hard to draw where you can see what I'm drawing and my hand isn't in the way. So forgive my somewhat shaky thing. And then it had like sort of drawing from memory. There was like something going across the middle, right? Some kind of thing. Oh, there's a thing in the middle. And like while we're looking at it, you guys can obviously like have your reference material as you're drawing. There's some other thing going on there like that. We'll draw this more precisely, but I think it's nice to get a little practice, especially with these more complex shapes before we actually put it on our map. I personally find it a little less frustrating, and several other YouTube videos that I saw about like hand drawing maps recommended this as well. So we'll start with that for like, you know, a draft of our ponds. We can add as much detail as we want later. So trees, there are trees in our, hello, welcome. So there are trees in here. When I started working on the materials for this workshop and I was drawing my like Spafford map, I had been looking at other people's hand-drawn maps for various purposes. And I was like, I want my map to look like that map that I saw online because it was super cool. And then when I sat down to draw my trees, they came out the same way I always draw trees. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. This is like, you will have a style. And so just roll with it today. So I tend to draw trees like this. They are, again, little U's, right? They're just connected little U's. You can think of them also like maybe little sheep, but they're nothing special. I might add some more leaves in there to give it a little texture with some more little connected W's and U's. And there you go. Looks like a tree, sort of. The thing is, in context, it will look more like a tree. And then also we saw that there's like hedgerows, right? Where there's like a bunch of connected trees or bushes. So I might want to have some way to make like multiple trees that go together. So I'm kind of like connecting half-drawn trees. Look at that, bunch of trees. So really simple, like just drawing little, in my case, little like U's and N's, little W's to make some trees. There are lots of other ways to make trees. Like if you study landscape architecture, there's a very stylized way to do this with like simple circles, with dots in the middle to indicate where the trunk is. And you can totally do stuff like that. Or you could do like, well, anything really. You could get really like realistic with this, but we're moving fast, so I'm not going to spend a ton of time like drawing individual leaves. Okay, so we also had our horses. You all are giving me a challenge here. So I'm gonna switch. I'm gonna share my screen so that the folks on camera can see what we're talking about. Because I don't think I shared it before. So south of our water treatment plant is some horse pasture. And if we zoom in, you can actually see, someone in the room pointed out, you can see the shadows of horses that are standing in the pasture, and they look like little tiny horses, and that's delightful. So let's try to draw some horses here. So we're just going to take this as like basic shapes, right? It looks like our horse kind of, these ones sort of have like a little suede horsey back. And then we're going to give them a little back end. Also remember, we have our erasers, right? So if we don't like something, we can always, I'm going to give them a little ear. Oh, you all can't, can you see that? No, you can't. This is the problem with Zoom. I'm going to stop sharing. Oh, but then I don't have a reference. Anyway, it's fine. We'll draw horses from memory. So he looks like that. And then maybe he's got some horsey legs. And remember, we're kind of doing representative drawing here, so we're not worried that it's not a perfect horse. I noticed in the shadow, I couldn't see his tail, but I want my horse to have a tail, so. I'm starting to look like a unicorn, which we could put unicorns in here too. Hi, welcome, have a seat. There's materials there also if you need them. You'll need 2 pieces of paper at least. So there is my horse. It does not look anything like the horse in the shadow, but there you go. So if I was gonna draw a horse, it might look something like that. But you can see, like, we could get really particular about this, and like, you know, I'm rolling with my silly horse here, but you know, if you wanted to spend some time on it, you could like do a lot of erasing and planning and stuff like that. And that is less fun to do on your actual map, because also once you get lines in there, erasing itty bitty spots on the map is hard. So it's better to practice here and kind of get a plan. All right, so we did our little horses for fun. Then we have some pasture land for the horses to live in. Right, so I think looking at that, they seem to be like, the pasture itself seems to have rounded corners for some reason. So I might do my pasture like those are 2 pastures, and then put some bounds on them and then round the corners. Pasture. And then we might want to think about, like, for the pasture, we might want to think about some kind of texture, and it looks kind of like they're kind of mottled. Oh, there's like puddles in there too. We're not gonna worry about those. I might just do some like stippling with my pencil and just give it a little dot texture. And maybe do some more in some places, because it sort of had like a mottled effect. So I'm making this up as I go. And again, like, yes, you can put a cat in yours. I was thinking if we did the quad, we'd have to draw little people, and that's terrifying for me. So I'd rather draw horses. So anyway, maybe this is what our pasture looks like, or maybe you want to put some grass in there and just do like little grass for me is just like little spikes and like putting more smaller spikes next to it. And look, all of a sudden it's grass. So we're not getting super fancy here, just, you know, there's nothing about this that it looks like actual grass until we put it in context, and then it's on a map and then suddenly it looks like grass because it has context. Okay, so that's a general plan for our pasture land. And then we had some fences and some railroads to round this out. So let's take a look back. So how would look, I'm assuming there's fences between the pastures because we can see them. So they look fairly a lot like lines to me for fences where we need fences. So does anyone see any fences that look more exciting,
To the left of the house.
like in this?
Yeah, if you zoom in on it, it's like.
Oh yeah, so these we can,
Oh,
yeah,
it's
more
a-
horses. So it looks like some of our fences are yeah, like cattle panel kind of stuff.
On the shadow.
Yeah. So, and again, this is like, that would be like, if we draw, our fences, you know, like we're seeing the panels kind of look something like this. That's sort of an oblique angle though, right? Because we're looking at the side of it, which is a totally, that's fine. We can do that. And you can mix oblique and nadir if you want to, like, the maps we're drawing are not technical or anything like that. So, you can make that choice. But if I was going to stick completely to like a nadir view, I think my fences would literally just be a line. But if you wanted to, you know, get symbolic too, like I heard people talking about like uh barbed wire, you could, you know, do a line and then put, you know, some X's on it. Or I'm thinking about like the way barbed wire is like twisted. You could actually like look up what barbed wire looks like and draw something with more detail on it. That's totally fine. Remember, today is about having fun. It's not necessarily about creating beautiful fine art and everything in perspective and scale and all that. We're not worried about that. We're just putting things on paper that make us happy. But you can certainly take this further and do that if you want later, but it's not right now. So the other thing we were looking at was railroads, right? We've got this railroad that runs through the side of our image, and we may or may not need that depending on what scale we decide. So railroads, you know, on like USGS maps kind of have the same kind of look to them. You've got the two tracks, one on each side for the rails themselves, but then underneath them, there is usually some kind of railroad ties, which literally are tying the rails down so that they don't split apart and move and stuff like that. So you'll see something along this line for in like a USGS map, or like if you're symbolically, you might also see this, which I think looks like zombie scars, but you know, whatever. So those are options. You know, I think in our map, we probably won't have a ton of railroad, but we'll see what happens with our scale. And yours may have more of that if you choose to center it elsewhere. Okay, so we've got kind of a plan, and it, you know, takes a little time to go through these things, and we may come back and do some more if we decide like, oh shoot, there's something we didn't plan for and we want to practice or make a plan for it before we put it on our map. Then we can always come back to this. At some point, like when we get to the inking process, we'll practice inking on this page as well. But like, let's start building our map, and we'll come back to inking when we're ready for that stage. Sound like a plan? All right, so I am putting this aside where I can, this practice thing aside where I can get to it later, because I'll probably come back to it. To make your lives easier, and also I find this to be a little less scary, we're going to limit the size of the map we're going to work on. So you've got 8.5 by 11 paper if you grab the printer paper that we've got here in the room. But like you saw in my example map, it doesn't take up the whole page, right? So under the camera, it's only a portion of the page itself. I think it's a lot easier to be successful if I'm not trying to fill an entire 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So there's a reason I put these data lab flyers in the thing, in the folder with the blank paper. And that's because they're the perfect size to use as a template for this. So if you want to grab one, go ahead. What I'm going to do is I'm going to plop this flyer down in the middle of my page. And it's about, this one's actually bigger than a quarter sheet. So it's a little bigger than the one I used in the example, but I'm just going to put this on the paper. I'm going to hold it down and I'm going to mark out the corners with my pencil. Sorry, I'm just going to move this real quick so I can see that it's roughly in. And you could decide, like, also you want to do a different size or you want to do the whole page, and that's fine. But I'm just going to take my pencil and I'm just going to draw the corners in here. It doesn't even have to be pretty because we can make it pretty later. So I'm just drawing my corners, trying not to move it. And then I'll probably put a couple marks around the edges too, in the middle, just so I know where the boundaries are. And like, I think originally the template I used was like a quarter sheet of like scratch paper that I just had at my desk. So it's not like I'm using anything super fancy. And again, you can pick whatever size you want. So I've marked out, basically drawn around this template. It's a nice little cardstock flyer for Data Lab. And then when I take it away, now I've kind of got this area to work in for my map. And I've got a lot of extra white space around the edge because then I don't have to draw on that. I don't have to fill that all up. It's less to do. So how are we doing in the room? Are we good? Yes, I like the thumbs up. That's helpful. All right, so we have a map, but it's blank. Woohoo! Look at us go. We've been successful today. All right, so what we want to do now is we're going to go back to our image, our Google Maps image that we're using as reference. And we're going to figure out, like, how much of this do we actually want to include? For my purposes, for the video, it's going to be easier if I have something that is landscape orientation, but you could certainly do something that's portrait or some other, angle or whatever. But just for the video, I'm gonna choose to do something that is more horizontal, which I think actually the site lends itself well to doing that. So I think if I frame up my my image to be kind of like that, and I think I will include definitely the sort of campus of the wastewater treatment. I guess maybe we want to, I know, right? Like, that's the problem now. We want,
We didn't make junkyard.
so we don't care. That's fine. Like, we don't care about this part, maybe you could. So we're thinking, in order to include the pasture, which, maybe something like this. So we're going to include this part of the water treatment plant. So we've got like the ponds. We're not going to care about this pond up here because we'll maybe cut it off like just north of the racetrack looking one. And that way we can include the little horse barns here, and we might actually get some railroad in there as well. All right. So, so the way we're going to do this, and like the way I recommend doing this and the way I've seen other folks recommend this as well, is we're going to think about this place as if we're standing there. Imagine you're there and you're looking around. We want to think about drawing, when we start with the pencil part of this, we want to start with the things that are lowest to the ground and draw them first. And then we will build up from there. So it makes sense to think about roughing in the roads first because they are lowest. And remember, we're working with pencil. We are going to erase this. So we're not going to worry about the fact that if I draw in a road and a tree overlaps it, I can draw the tree over the top of it. When I ink it, I'm just not gonna ink the road under the tree, right? So we're gonna start with pencil. We're gonna start at the bottom, like literally the bottom, the lowest things physically there, and work our way up. And then when we ink, we're gonna go the other direction. We're gonna start at the top and ink our way down. If that doesn't make sense right now, it will when we get to that part. So I'm gonna make sure that my horse barns are in there. So I'm maybe gonna start with those first. And I think that we're probably not gonna have the whole horse pasture, just the way I'm gonna frame this. So maybe we've got like 4 of those guys in there. Maybe they're slightly less than half. So somewhere in here, I'm just gonna sketch them in. So those will be my horse areas. Oh, sorry, you can't see that. So look, it's not even, there's like, what is this? It's all scribbly, whatever. So there's my horse pastures. Clean that up a little. I will say, I'll put these on the screen. If you don't have, if you haven't worked with these foam erasers before, they come, different brands make them. They are amazing. They don't rough up the paper, and they erase really well with graphite. So, if you do a lot of this, or you just are tired of erasers tearing up your paper, get some of those. So I'm going to be switching back and forth in the room between the map reference and drawing, so you can see. There's just no way around it. Okay, so we've got our horse pastures in the corner, just kind of roughed in, and then looks like our road. I'm going to make a couple marks on my page just so that I can show you how I'm going to draw this in. Goes to about here, and then up here. I'm going to draw my first road in. So I'm going to draw this road that's McKinley Lane, label on here, and I'm just going to put it in. So I made a couple marks on my paper for like how the road changes shape. So it kind of just goes maybe like this, and then when it gets to about the second horse pasture, it kind of popped up. So I'm just going to draw this in. Again, I'm not going to care if it's perfect, because this isn't meant to be perfect. We're just going to put that guy in there. Oops. Showing you the zoom thing. Oh, zoom is being stupid. Because we needed that minimized and tiny. Right. Okay, so there's our we've got a road, we've got some horse barns. Hey, we have a map. It's not great, but it's a map. So we met our goal today. That was it, right? We need to put in a couple other roads. So it looks like right about where the points of inflection are on our road, there's some more roads that come off the top of there. It's tough doing this without looking at it at the same time. So mine is going to be super rough. Maybe it goes like that. So I'm just putting in the roads, and like it looks like nothing right now, but it will get better. It will get more interesting. So this is really rectangular. You all can't see this on the screen, but I'm just putting in my road that goes around the ponds. So I just extended this part up here so that I can have my ponds in here. So you're just, you can follow, you don't have to draw exactly what I'm drawing. You can look at your image and, go back and forth, and add things as you go. So I'm going to draw, there's sort of like this triangular area. It's going to, for me, it's going to run off the map, and that's fine. We're just going to cut that off where it hits the boundary. And then what else have we got? I'm just trying to figure out how much of what's on the image is actually going to show up in I might have drawn this a little wonky. That's all right. Mine will not be to scale, and it definitely will not matter. All right, so in sort of this section here, there's two other ponds that are rectangular that look like that. And then there's another pond that's sort of more square in here. We're just going to call it like that. It's definitely not the right shape according to the air photos, but we're not going to worry about that. I will say if you wanted to be more precise with this, especially if you're working in like a digital form, like if I was doing this in Inkscape, I would take a screenshot of my reference map and I would trace on top of that and it would be a lot more accurate. But we're doing hand-drawn maps with no precision today. And that is our goal. All right. So we've got, at least on mine, I've got some horse pastures in there. I've got some ponds roughed in and some roads. Let's put in our other ponds. So we've got sort of a road that goes across here, and then we've got 3 circle ponds. I'm just gonna put those in pretty rough. And then we've got our racetrack pond that is up here. Maybe he needs to be bigger. Beauty of erasers. Yeah, these polymer ones are great. Okay, so we've got our racetrack one, and I'm just gonna put the tracks in. All right, so we've got our ponds in there. We've got some buildings. I'm going to look at the buildings on the screen and show you what I do after the fact because it's really hard to remember switching back and forth between the two. And like for me, like the buildings are the least exciting part of this. So I am really not gonna stress if the buildings are not perfect. They are rough. Mine are really not in the right place, actually, and that is okay. So for folks in the room, I just added in these buildings and this is totally not to scale at this point. Things are not dimensionally like exact, and that's cool. It doesn't matter. I honestly did not think I'd be drawing the wastewater treatment plant this morning. So, just take it all with a grain of salt. And then I'm gonna put in some more things. I just roughed in this more industrial kind of looking area over here. I don't even know what all is in there, but so you can see like the purpose of this is just we're putting in the things, we're roughing them in, we can add more detail as we go. And we're not going to worry about the fact that stuff is squished and maybe not perfect. It's totally fine. All right, I think next I'm going to look at what's over here in this kind of triangle area and figure out what is actually in view of my map and what's not.
Stations for drawing very weirdly shaped buildings.
Draw them weirdly shaped. One thing that I find helpful with doing this kind of stuff is to break things down into geometric shapes. And you can especially if we're working in pencil, like if one section of the building is sort of square, maybe draw as a square and then overlap it with other squares. So the more you can just break it down and be like, okay, I'm looking at cars right now on the image, cars are roughly like roundy rectangles, with some other colored roundy rectangles on them for this kind of work. Just break it down into basic geometric shapes and you'll be surprised how accurate it looks. I also find it helpful not to worry about the product with this. If I think I want to draw something that's like the best thing ever, it's not gonna work out for me. So it's more like if it looks cool, then I'll decide, you know, to do something with it. Yeah, like north of the ponds. Yeah. Yes.
Like metal, it's like metal recycling of wood. So you'll find a lot.
Oh. All right, so I've gotten some buildings in there. I think I want to start adding some trees and, you know, maybe like there's only so much detail you can put in these, so don't worry about like, you know, you don't need to have every single like power line or something like that if that's not your goal. You can leave out detail. But let's take a look at like, you know, where the trees are. It looks like along McKinley Lane, there's a bunch of trees. Especially on like the north side of the road. On the edge of the pasture, there's some like a hedgerow or bushes or something. So I'm just gonna start filling in my trees with my tree plan, right? So I've got, and it's okay if they hang over the edge too. And they can overlap the road too if they do that, or if you want them to. Like we said, we're not necessarily doing this as it appears in real life. We can make up what we want, because this isn't science. So I'm just looking at the reference image. We've got a bunch of trees in here. And so I don't need to draw individual trees. That's the beauty of making little fluffy sheep trees, is I just fill them in. It's not precise. I don't know how many trees are in there. Doesn't matter. And then we saw that there was like a little hedgerow on the north side of the pasture. So I'm just kind of putting that in. Maybe I want to round the corners of my pasture a little bit more so I can actually see that.
The building. It's the most insane shaped building.
Well, let's start with that. Do that first part, yeah, other part, and the pointy part.
All right. So now you can see one of the things I find one of the things I find is that by the time we start adding in like the trees and the plants, it starts looking like a map. Even if we thought the rest of it looked kind of maybe not great, like once we put in the trees, it's like, oh, cool, it's a map now. So I can see I can add some more trees here along this part of McKinley on mine and this little kind of triangle spot on that map. So I'll just put some more in there. Yeah, there's a bigger tree in here.
Funny what happens to aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Mine
See, mine went the other way, so. Oh, whoops. Yeah, but we're not worrying about that today. Like I said, yeah. And you could totally like, if you want to get super precise and you wanted to draw maps by hand, you can use stuff like a light box to like see through it. You can like do like carbon paper transfers, like print something out and then use carbon paper to transfer to your drawing paper. There's all kinds of ways to get precision in this, but you know, today we're not worried about precision. Like my horse pastures are really not even, and I kind of like them that way. I think it's fine. Okay, what else can we add into this? So we've got these ponds here, which are mostly square in the picture, but very rectangular in mine. They kind of have some stripes in them. So I'm just going to add some stripe texture, like drag the pencil lightly over to give it a little striping. I don't know what that striping is, but that's fine. We can see the texture and we can add that in. What else can we do? Looks like I need to put some arms on my round pond, so maybe I'll add in that detail. Looks like there was this arm, and then there was one that goes across the middle of these two, so put that in. Those are easy to draw, they're just lines. I'm gonna make my pond a little bit more circular now. And I'm sure anyone that worked here at this point would be like, oh yeah, I know what you're drawing. It's cool. There's enough going on there that it's identifiable as part of campus. There's some other roads we can add in. We just put in, there's another field here that's south of McKinley, and it's got some trees around it too, so put those in. There's like grass over here, so I'm just gonna put some dots for that grass. So that's fun. It's starting to look more like a map. I hope yours are as well. Looks like I could put a little border on that. More trees here and here. Put some more dots in my little grassy field next to my ponds. And we can put some dots in our horse pasture because we said we wanted to have, at least on mine, I don't know what you decided, but on mine I decided I wanted my pastures to be spotty, so I'm gonna put those dots in. And obviously we can spend more time doing this. When I planned this, I didn't think about how much dots I'd have to put in on camera. I think one of the magical things that happens is as you add more detail, you go from having this map that maybe just looks like sort of random geometric shapes on a page, and then all of a sudden it starts looking like an actual map, and all you did was add dots and some fluffy trees, and like it's starting to look like an actual thing. So I'm starting to actually get pretty happy with this. What else can we add? So I just added in this sort of polygon here that's around this building, and it's sort of grassy looking, so I'm gonna add some dots to that too. There were some cars parked here, so I'm gonna draw some cars. I'm making my cars like little roundy rectangles with a front windshield and a back windshield. And like by themselves, they don't really look like anything, but together they kind of look like cars. So they're not even really square. Anyway, so that's adding more things. And then I haven't done anything with my pond that's here. So what I'm going to do is I'm noticing that around the pond is sort of some texture. So I'm just going to put in a little squiggly lines to kind of indicate whatever. It's like maybe some grass growing around the edge of that, maybe some algae. All right. That's starting to look like a thing. Looks like my blank spot south of McKinley can just have some trees. I don't really know what's going on over there, but we'll just put those in. Exactly. Well, also, like, no one knows that there's not trees there, right? I mean, somebody who works there maybe, but it's fine. So it's my map, it can have trees. This one's pasture too. It's adults. So one of the things about like, having a plan for like the cartography is like when I realize like, oh, there's a grassy spot there, and I'm like, okay, plan for like grassy things are going to have dots. Then it starts bringing it together artistically. Like you've got similar textures that repeat. And so I'm not doing a new texture for every single, type of grass that's there. I am saying all grass looks like this. And then that sort of starts to bring some harmony to it. So it's not as chaotic as maybe an air photo would be. The fact that the horse pastures are lighter than this other looks like pasture kind of situation south of McKinley, like doesn't matter. I'm gonna do them the same because I've decided that's what grass looks like in my map. Okay, so in the interest of time, I think as one always says in these new workshops, I think I'm going to call my map done for now. If I was doing this, sitting down and making a map and I had all the time in the world, I would add more detail and stuff like that. But I think for the purposes of our map, for today, I'm going to call this done so that we can move on to the inking portion of this and also maybe get to some color. Now, typically what we would do is we would take our plan here and we would want to practice inking things because the pencil and the pen are going to behave very differently. And I've got, I like these precise roller ball pens. I use them for note taking and sketchnoting and stuff like that. And I'll use this for my fine lines here. But so like if I'm doing my road and I want it to be colored in with the pen, it's going to look different than the pencil, right? So I might actually try different ways of coloring that in and see what do I like. And then the pencil's still in there, so I'm going to use the eraser and just take that out. Just note, different pens dry at different speeds. So I know this one dries pretty quick, so I'm going in with the eraser real fast. But the pens that you guys have, if you're not using one of these, you might want to give it a little drying time before you go in with the eraser, because otherwise you're going to smear ink all over. And that is a real big bummer when you've spent time inking stuff. And this is the place to find out on the practice sheet. So anyway, just a heads up about pen ink is that it dries at different speeds. And I'm noticing like with my pencil, I had really fine little, like on my rocky road, I had really fine little upside down U's to make the rocky feel to it. And I'm noticing my roller ball pen, because it's a thicker line weight, it doesn't do it that well. So I'm going through here and I'm sort of practicing, what it's like to use the pen to try to trace over my my pencil here. Noticing that the pen feels really different trying to do the curves for me on the ponds. Trees are easy because who cares if the tree matches exactly, it will still look like a tree. Oh, I didn't put any horses in my map yet. Well, we'll put one of those in. Probably want to make my horse smaller in the actual map, but. And this will also give you a chance to refine some things too as you start inking and realize things are a little bit different. Pasture's easy, that's just dots. I'm not going to spend time on that. So you kind of get the idea. So we want to use the pen over the pencil and get an idea of what that's going to feel like. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time doing that right now, just so we can get on to other things. So we talked earlier when we were talking about when we're drawing things with the pencil, we're starting at the lowest level on the ground. We're starting with the stuff on the ground and then we're penciling in things as we go. With the pen, I mentioned we're going to go the opposite direction. With the caveat that if you put words on your map, you are going to ink your words first. And the reason for that is that words tend to spread out. So for, in my example of Lake Stafford, you can't see it because I erased all the pencil marks, but like the Wyatt Theater, these are really wide letters, like W's and Y's and A's and H's. These are wide letters. They get wider as you ink them because the pen ink is, at least on my pen is fatter than my pencil line. So they tend to expand. And then I ended up drawing um, the boundaries of the Wyatt Theater polygon behind it and having to break up the edge of the building so that it didn't obscure the words. So if you've labeled anything with words on your map, make sure you ink the words first because they need priority, and then deal with everything else around them. I didn't put any words on my map today, so I don't have that example, but just a heads up, words come first, and then after that, then start at the top. So because I'm going from highest to lowest, I'm going to start with my trees, and I'm going to start inking my trees. And I'm honestly really not worried about my pen following the exact same line as the pencil with the trees because they're trees and they are kind of chaotic around the edges, and it doesn't matter. So here on my map, the tree is crossing over the road. In reality, on the air photo, it doesn't do that, but in my map, it does. So that's fine. But that's an example of where we want the tree to go over the road. So we got to ink it first. If we ink the road first, then we have a road line going through the tree, and we don't want that. So that's why we're starting on the top, so that the things that go over the top of other things get priority. So I'm going to go real quick on my trees. What also sometimes happens, at least for me, is I ink everything, and then once it looks like this is all very busy because I've got double lines right now, it will look a lot calmer once I erase things because that extra pencil line will go away. But then I also find things I missed. So all right, so I'm going really quick on these like bushes and stuff because I'm not too worried what they look like. If I was doing this for like not under a time crunch, I would spend more time on them. Okay, there are my bushes. And I'm realizing I didn't put my horse in there. So I'm going to put the horse in, and I'm going to erase a little spot for him. Yeah. All right, so I've got my tiny little horse in there. And the reason I need to do that now is because the horse is tall compared to the things around it in the pasture. So I've got to ink the horse first before the dots. Otherwise, the dots will end up all over the horse. And he's not a spotty horse in my mind. So. And like I made this like way smaller than I did on my practice sheet. So I'm going to be giving up a little bit of detail here to make this horse work. I think that'll be fine. He's a little messy because there's pencil behind him, but I think that'll do for a horse. All right, and then so the other things, these we know that the ponds are probably taller than other things, but they don't really overlap anything, so it doesn't really matter. Mostly in this map, we care about like the vegetation is what is going to be taller than anything else. So we really care about that. So I'm just going to start inking around now. I think everything else is not an issue in terms of height, so I'm just going to ink stuff as I go. Maybe I'm going to make the roads a little textury. I didn't put that in with pencil, but I can do that with my pen now. I'm also making my big roads that even are asphalt roads, I'm making them a little rough on the edges just for texture. It also helps on some level hide any road edge that is maybe not perfect because look, it's rough, it's fine. It was meant to be that way. Um,
Just little use for your road, or you draw in a straight line and then use over that?
so where's my practice sheet? So like, yeah, so like yeah, so I like my roads are just like straight pencil lines in the map as I'm inking it, but then as I'm drawing with the pen, instead of doing, just a straight line, I'm kind of making a little texture. Um, and you could certainly just do straight lines. I just realized like the straight lines on my map to me don't speak to me at this moment, so I'm doing them a little rough. It also is forgiving that way, so you don't have to worry about having straight lines. One thing I've found with like, on my map, I've decided that like the grassy areas are gonna have dots. It looks like there are a ton of dots with when I'm inking this because there's pencil dots there too. And after I erase, I'll probably have to go back and add in more because half the dots are gonna disappear. And they're also gonna be weirdly distributed because I can't really tell looking at it. I'm like, oh, there's plenty of dots in that section, but I'll probably add more after I erase. Put in this building here. Poor buildings, they have no detail, and I don't know. They don't speak to me today. So I'm just going around all of the shapes that I've drawn with my pencil and putting them in with a pen, and then also like, adjusting like some of like the buildings I didn't take a lot of time with, and so I'm kind of squaring them up a little bit more with the pen. Oh, mine just trails off, and that's okay. I'm turning the page just, you don't have to keep your map straight up and down. Okay. I blazed through mine and it's inked as much as I'm gonna ink it for now. And I'm gonna just, my next step is gonna be to erase all of the pencil lines that are there, that I don't want. You can certainly keep your pencil lines if you like, but, I'm just gonna carefully take my eraser and, just kind of go over these pencil lines to take them out. And you'll see it starts to clean up at this point. Things get a little bit more simple. But also, again, if you're working with pens you're not used to, make sure that your ink is dry before you take the eraser to it, or you'll smear the ink all over the page. And also you'll get ink on your eraser and then it will come back to you later. So don't be impatient with letting your ink dry. Especially at this point, I'm invested in this. Like I wasn't super excited about it at first, but now I'm like, well, I kind of actually like it. It's kind of fun. So I don't really want to smear ink all over it. But you can see like in the parts where I've erased, like it starts to clean up and it looks a lot less chaotic. And if I want that chaos, then I need to go back in and add it with a pen. The other thing you might notice as you're erasing is the things that you meant to put detail on that you forgot. Like I didn't put any of the like stuff that goes across the racetrack. So I might, after I erase, might just go back in and add some stuff. Oh, yes, I did too. And I noticed that sort of over in this pond area, and then I just decided I'm going to erase those lines and pretend like I don't need them. Because I don't, I guess. Yes.
Cover up a incorrectly locked in research.
That is a great idea. Plus, like our imagery in the, the reference image is leaf off. So that tree may be very fluffy in real life now that it is spring. Who is to say anyway? Okay. The other thing you'll notice is when you start erasing, you'll start noticing if there was lines you didn't ink. Because you'll probably see that they're pencil, but otherwise they'll disappear. So you have to put them back. I'm just gonna flip over and take a look at this track and just add a couple lines in it. I don't really know what these things are. So just to make myself a little happier, I just added these lines on my racetrack because I think that makes it look a little bit more like something's going on there. I'm also realizing my pastures, they remind me of Pop-Tarts, and that kind of makes me happy. Okay, so you in the room may not be at this point yet, but the next stage is if we wanted to add color, now is when I would do that. And I didn't do color on my example maps from Lake Spafford because by the time I got done with that map, I was like, I actually really like this map and I don't want to risk ruining it with color. So I didn't put color on those. But what you could do is you can go back to your practice sheet and kind of use this as a place to audition colors. So I've got some colored pencils that have been hanging around my desk to work with. And so like maybe I want to try and see like, do I like this color of brown for roads? Because it's kind of a, rural area, or maybe I actually want like gray. So I might try out just, on two ends of a road, like, how does this work? I'm also noticing that to get the gray colored pencil to color, I have to press a lot harder than the other ones. So, learning with my materials here and seeing what works, what doesn't. You could do this, with markers, you could use watercolors. I would caution if you're gonna use like a wet medium for your color, you'd want to make sure that your ink, if you want to keep it in the spot you put it, is color fast. So if you're using like a water-based ink, today I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting like wet watercolors on it. So just think about your tools before you get going, but you're certainly welcome to come grab some colored pencils from me if you wanted to play with those. Okay, great. So we've got some other folks in the room with things to share, but like maybe I want to try my trees. Oh, that's a very blue-green. It's not what I wanted. This is just preference, right? It's not really about like what color the tree is. I could make them purple if I wanted. They're my trees. Wow, these colored pencils are not very good. They're not transferring color to the page. But so maybe I want to put more color around the edges. Yeah, I'm liking that effect. And maybe lighter in the middle for my trees. Tempted to make my horse rainbow so we can be a unicorn. But yeah, so we're gonna play with colors, and maybe I want my pastures to be some green and some brown. You can go like super realistic. You could do more representative. It's totally up to you. I'm gonna switch over and just take a look at what color my pawns are. Pawns are generally dark brown and black. So I might actually do those with the ink instead. But yeah, so the whole point of this is just to test things out and see what you like. Especially if it's something you've been spending a couple hours on, you want to see what the effect of your color is before you apply it to the actual map. Bring this back and see, like, do I want the black colored pencil or do I want, oh, I also, there's another pen I work with a lot is a Flair pen. They're just like a felt tip marker, but they're for writing. They're good for like thicker lines for like coloring stuff in. I don't know if they're color fast, but I actually like that better to fill in the line. So yeah, play with, before you ink color stuff on your real map, play with it and see how you like it. Because otherwise you're kind of committed once it's on there. Yeah. I've got these greens. Ooh.
I also have a lot of
It might be fun to layer them too once the marker dries, like add some colored pencil texture over the top. Yeah. So you can play with it. I'm just gonna throw in some color here. Wow, these are bad. I said I would share, and now I'm complaining about how bad my marker, my crayons are. They just don't want to be dark. And I'm sort of kicking myself because I actually have a better set of colored pencils in my drawer at work, and I did not bring them because they're bigger, and these are horrible. But these are apparently erasable, so you know, low commitment. Yeah, that's why they're horrible. But you don't need to color it. Like if you're happy with it in black and white, like don't feel pressured to put color on it. It's just an option. Yeah. Yeah, you can also just like, yeah, highlight stuff that you want to make more clear. Steer people's eyes away from maybe the sections I didn't color or didn't fill in with as much detail. Yeah. Uh-huh. The thing I've noticed doing this is like, especially like circles, I'll have like one flat spot because like it's like maybe the way your wrist works or something. Like it cannot be actually circular.
Yeah.
And I think like, oh, I'll fix that with the pen, and then my wrist does the exact same motion with the pen as it did with the pencil, and it's still flat on one side. Yes, but it's how my wrist has decided I will draw this. But that can be why like having the templates can be really helpful if you really need things to be a specific shape, like use a tool to help.
Helps with consistent size.
Yeah, that's true. If you want to make sure they're all the same size. But it really is just like, we said our goal for today is to have fun. So whatever is fun is what we're doing. The one thing I was thinking that might be fun just for the video purposes, like we're coming up, we've got like 10 minutes to noon. If folks wanted to, we could, you could share, your work in progress. Like we can just stick them under the camera. So to record them if people are willing. Um, noting that like all of this is just rough and quick and fun and it's not finished. So it might be a fun thing to share. I do know, like I'm active on Blue Sky, and I was talking about, the plans for this workshop. Um, coming together for today, and people were saying that they were interested in doing this workshop in other like map time kind of groups. And so it might be fun if folks could see like what our group ended up doing. My pastures look less like Pop-Tarts now that they're brown. Although now I'm sort of wishing I had made a map with Pop-Tarts and unicorns. Maybe later today. I don't know. Yeah, definitely. If you're going to do words, I highly recommend doing them first.
Sure with my pencil, I can't do it with pen.
Yes. That's why we practice.
Say I found the thinking about like which order you drew things in, depending on what you were drawing them with, very helpful.
Yeah, that was something I found on, like, and if you look at the workshop materials, there is a, like a additional resources section. I linked to some of the, like the YouTube channels that I was watching to get inspiration, and somebody, one of them, I can't remember which, recommended that. And I was like, that like put into words what I sort of was thinking and sort of know intuitively, but like, it's really important. Um, especially the words, but you know, the like trees that go over the top of stuff is good to do in the right order for less frustration. Yeah. Yeah, we picked an area that doesn't have a whole lot of layering. Like the arbor, if you do like the arboretum, there's a lot more because there's also like topography in the arboretum, which is not the case in most places in Davis. You know, there's like a lot of like slopes and stuff like that. So you can have a lot of things overlapping each other there that we don't get in other places. So yeah. So depending on how you decide to do that, you might change things up. I'm just looking at this reference map for colors. Yeah, so maybe I need to decide what color my roads are. Color wise, this area is not very exciting. Yeah.
Like that was, I didn't, it came out far closer
Yes.
to what I thought was like on the thing than I thought was possible, and I think that doing this iconography ahead of time
Mhm.
helped me not freak out like, oh, what is this? What's this? Like it's a building, it's a road,
Yes.
it's a grass, it's a knot, and I'm like
Mhm.
simplifying it conceptually like that. Like, oh, look, that's what it is. It's a building, it's a building.
Yeah, and that process again, that's something I got from one of the other videos that I was watching. And when I will confess, when I did the original map for that shows the Lake Spafford one that shows up in the workshop materials, I actually, because I have my own visual vocabulary that I use for sketchnoting, I just dove in and did the map because I wasn't worried too much about it. But then later on, I realized that this would be a good process to actually go through and do explicitly rather than just sort of what's in my head. And so I actually went back and did the practice sheet after I did the map for the materials. But I actually think it's a really good idea to do it this way. So we've got just a couple more minutes. I'm about as far as on mine as I'm going to take it today. I don't know if folks are interested in putting their maps under the camera to share what they're reporting, but I'd welcome folks to do that. Yeah, bring it up. Let's put it on camera. So this is Alex. Wow, that's really awesome. Plus then people in the room can see it. So he got the railroad in his. You even did a smaller map. Did you find it helpful to do the small map? Yeah.
I use my notebook paper.
Oh, yeah.
Because it has graph paper.
Yeah, so
I
I'm
also
gonna,
went vertical.
yeah, I'm gonna turn it sideways just because it shows up on camera, but. Oh, you have 3 horses. I love it. And see, like, it looks like a map, right? Like by the time we go through
Yeah,
this
I mean-
process, it's like, it's your style, but it looks like a map. super
I
awesome.
don't know if those are actually fish ponds, but Naomi said fish ponds.
Well, you
so.
can put fish in your ponds because it's your map.
Turn it in and sign me.
Yeah. I appreciate you guys sharing your work for the camera. Look at that. That is awesome. But so you can see yeah,
Yeah.
one reason why it's cool to do this and show each other is because then you can see like different stylistic differences. So we can see like other choices people make, and then maybe if you do this again later, you'll choose other styles. That's great. Look at that. So you have Pop Tarts too. That's awesome. I love the trees. Thank you. Oh man, you guys, I'm so surprised you all are willing to do this. I really appreciate it. Oh, this one goes this way. This is great. So this one, no color, but like still really effective, right? Like, yeah,
Look at all our fences down there.
yeah,
It's really cool.
that's great. And we've got practice up at the top. You can totally do it on the same page. I love everyone's horses. Drawing the horses was a great idea. Yeah, they are. But they all still look like horses. Another one. Oh, I like how you did just the dots on the
Yeah.
corners. Like that's way better than mine, which was a lot of work.
Okay. I'm gonna try to bring it back.
Okay,
Hopefully,
awesome.
if we can, yeah. I didn't see you on picnic day. I thought you might be at the VR stuff.
Yeah.
I was helping at a block party.
Oh, there we go.
So-
Yeah. So this one is not the same map that everyone else is doing. This is a different area in Sacramento, right?
Sacramento.
Yeah. So super cool. Look, different style of trees. They're
Yeah.
much more round because you use the template, right?
Yeah, well, I wanted to get the trees to be sized proportional to their actual size. 'Cause
yeah.
The point was kind of the trees. We've
Mhm.
planted trees in this
Oh,
park.
cool.
So that was sort of the perspective, instead of trees sort of being the set dressing, the trees are sort of the point.
The
But I
point.
only had that discovery like 3/4 of the way through that I could do the sizing, so
Yeah.
I didn't quite get to the inking part.
Yes, but I mean, that's the point of this, though. You
Yeah.
learn some stuff along the
Yeah.
way. So I think we'll go ahead and,
Sign your work.
oh, we have to sign our work. Yes, we do. All right, so, and also feel free to date it. It's probably a good idea so we can find it in a drawer later. You can totally do that. All right, so there's mine. All signed and pretty. So I think this is a good place to end this workshop and the recording. So I want to thank everyone in the room, not only for attending and participating with me, but also for sharing your work. That is awesome. That's a gift. I really appreciate that. And so hopefully this recording is useful on some level for the folks who want to watch it. But thank you again. Thank you everyone. And I'll stop the recording and then traditional dumb questions time for map time.